as usual, Ross Dellinger has no understanding of how this show works.
Well, listen, I mean, he knows when the show starts. He watches it every day. So clearly, tweeting out this tweet we're about to show you at, 2:00 and 59 minutes, not real, not real considerate, Ross, if I do say so myself.
But what did we say yesterday about the SEC playing 9 conference games? When you Looney Tunes lost your mind on me because I said, hey, if I'm the SEC, under no circumstances am I playing 9 conference games in the current model. It's not happening because I ask you again, what is the upside for the SEC to play a 9th conference game in the current situation? Why would they do that? What is the net gain? There isn't one. And I think if we learned anything from the jackwagons on the selection committee, one, human beings are not intelligent and they cannot do things objectively. That's out the window, right? Number 2, playing a cupcake schedule is rewarded. Playing, teams in November that are D2 or you're getting rewarded for that.
Yes.
So if you are the SEC who overwhelmingly dominated the top 10 with strength of schedule last year, overwhelmingly at the end of the football season, I think it was 6 of the top 10 strength of schedules lived in the SEC. And I'll continue to beat this drum. And we can argue in the comments section. We can argue all day long. The SEC is the best and deepest college football conference in the land. And if we need to duke it out over that, please let's do it. But this tweet today from Ross Dellinger is so compelling because it talks about exactly what I said. If you want to go to 16 teams and you're going to stack the seeding 1 through 16 based on their rankings without consideration for a conference championship game, the SEC will gladly go to 9 games. Gladly. Ross Dellinger, during a call earlier today, Big Ten ADs discussed a 5 AQ automatic qualifier and 11 at-large college football model under consideration in the SEC. Many ADs say they would not support such a model if the SEC remains at 8 conference games. The Big Ten plays 9 conference games. But again, if we look at the stark contrast between the bottom of the SEC and the bottom of the Big Ten, Jake, I just don't see any value for the SEC in the current situation with the current format to play 9 games.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be said. I mean, this whole 8 versus 9 conference games, conversation, half of this conversation is just the rest of college football being a pain in the side of the SEC. I mean, let's be really honest and transparent here. That ADs in other conferences and, folks that are outside of the SEC, of course, they're going to say the SEC should have to play 9 games. Of course, if you're in the Big 12 or the ACC, your opinion's going to be, well, yeah, the SEC should have it as difficult as possible. If they have the best talent, it should be as hard as possible. And that level of thinking or that way of thinking has put those same people in a position where they're not the SEC, where they're not winning as much as they should win. And to me, I sit here and I look at this and I say, at some point, you're going to have to get on board with the fact that winning and winning national championships with regularity is really all that matters. And ultimately, you can sit here and try to, hold this process up and try to be a pain in the side, but there's no reason for the SEC to play 9 conference games because all you're doing is you just want the SEC to absorb more pain. You want them to have to play the extra game just to say, oh, yeah, everyone's playing all the same games. Well, why would the SEC play more games when the games they already play, 1 less game, are clearly of more significance with better talent on bigger stages and have more meaning? The SEC slogan on ESPN that plays thousands of times during the season, it just means more. It's true. It does mean more because it is the best talent in college football going at it. And while I agree the Big 12 was a hell of a quarterback league last year, and that's some of the best quarterback talent we've seen in quite some time, overall, top to bottom, it's not comparable. So what you should be saying in the Big 12 and the ACC, or maybe what you should be thinking or trying to get done in partnership with the SEC in these conferences is, hey, how can we make it so that it's as equitable as possible for everybody? That's the word you should be using. Equitable. Hey, how can we make it so that the SEC feels like we're having to put in the same amount of work, but we also feel like we're getting a reasonable amount of value back? That's the conversation. This nonsense about 8 or 9 games is exactly that. It's nonsense. It's the wrong thing to be looking at. And it tells me, based on the fact that Ross is tweeting about this again, it tells me that ADs from other conferences are frustrated and pissed off and not in the mood to deal with Darth Sankey. And I'm just telling you, at some point, you got to change how you go about this, because you're not going to get your way or all of what you want either way. You're going to have to compromise.
That's right.
So
That's
at some point, these ADs and these presidents and these commissioners are going to have to come together and say, okay, what do we really want out of this? Because sticking it to the SEC hasn't really worked out for us to this point.
But I think, and again, I want to put this graphic up. This is what I was talking about. Here's the strength of schedule from last year. And everybody wants to talk about how the Big Ten is a better conference. How do you argue with this? How do you argue with this? This is the end of season strength of schedule from ESPN. When you look at the fact that it's Georgia, Mississippi State, one of the worst teams in the SEC, had the second best strength of schedule in the country. In the entire country.
So it kind of makes sense why they might be one of the worst teams.
Right? And you look at Notre Dame there, Michigan, Texas, Florida, Kentucky, Oklahoma, again, another bottom feeder team, and then Penn State. It's hard to argue with the fact that that is built on the back of a really strong conference.
Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Oh, well, Monty, the Big Ten plays 9 conference games. Well, if you were the Big Ten, wouldn't you want to play 9 conference games?
It makes more sense.
Because, half of your conference is trash, and pretty much everybody agrees with that, right? Like the bottom half of the Big Ten, those are gimmies. Those are 2-foot putts that you're going to make every single time. That's a 1-foot layup. That's you're winning those games. You know what those games are, dude? Those games are, hey, let's look at their schedule at the end of the year and let's see a bunch of 65-3 type games. That's what those are for the Big Ten. So, of course, the Big Ten wants to play 9 conference games. So, again, it brings me back to the point. And I really do feel like we have to have this conversation today. And yes, we will get to the Pac-12, but I really feel like this is a sticking point.
A big one.
At what point do the Brett Yormarks of the world, the Jim Phillips of the world, all the administrators, at what point do these people say to themselves, okay, we're sitting here, and it kind of harkens back to the Sankey clip yesterday about stop giving me problems, I want solutions and ideas.
Yes.
At what point do these administrators start saying, okay, okay, maybe the SEC is not going to acquiesce and play 9 games. They're never going to do that. But, if you're these people, maybe they're not going to do that. What is it that, for the Big 12, let's say, what do we need to get out of this process? In my opinion, just the bottom line is you have to have your AQs. Those have to stay intact. That's a non-negotiable. But can you get anything else? Is there any other area where you can get any type of advantage to help your conference? That is what they should be looking at, not telling the SEC that they're lazy and they don't play enough games and it's unfair and, the SEC is trying to ruin college football. Like, at some point, you have to get over that.
And I continue to go back to what these coaches are saying. Listen to Brian Kelly, the head coach at LSU. Is he talking about playing the Big 12 or the ACC and how exciting that is? He's not.
The depth in this league from top to bottom, and that we are the premier league in the country.
But you could do that in the playoffs, though.
You can do it in the playoffs, too. Absolutely.
Okay.
No doubt. But you can also show yourself during the regular season in this opportunity.
Sure.
All right.
Thanks.
Got to play the Big Ten, dude. Got to play the biggest games in college football.
Your partners. It makes a lot of sense. And so when you look at the Big Ten and the ADs today, according to Ross Dellinger, who, again, we love on this show, he's one of the best in the business. Ross Dellinger saying many ADs in the Big Ten said they will not support a 5-11 model if the SEC remains at 8 conference games. And I told you yesterday, a TV source of mine told me There is absolutely no incentive for the SEC to add a 9th game if they're going to stick at 12, or they're not going to change the way that the seeding's done. The minute that seeding changes, you're going to see the SEC play 9 conference games. And why is that? Well, very simply, look at the rankings last year in the conference. Look at how many. If you look at the third column over, AP college football playoff rankings, look at how many in the top 16 you'd have had there. You'd have had 6 in the top 16 of the SEC last year. 6. Missouri would have been the one there that would have missed out. But you look at South Carolina, Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Tennessee would have had a home playoff game. If we'd have done straight rankings, Tennessee would have had a home playoff game. Texas, Georgia, it would have been a dominant 50% of the field would have been in the SEC. And if you're the SEC and you have that opportunity, sure, you'll go to 9 games. Because now, what is the saying? What is the tagline? It just means more, right? And when you look at what those games mean, and we start talking about how really important every single regular season game is, because how many times have you guys come on the show and said, oh, September doesn't matter, October doesn't matter? Well, now it does.
And apparently last year it did.
Yeah.
Alabama.
I think it is really significant. And again, I'm not here to tell you that the Big Ten is a terrible league. And I understand we have a ton of Big Ten fans. But it's hard to argue that when you look at some of the finishes in that league, and you look at Purdue with an FPI of 120, Northwestern, Maryland, Michigan State, Wisconsin, not competitive teams. And you look at Rutgers playing the 62nd strength of schedule. The bottom half of the Big Ten is not strong. You look at even at Washington, a new member of the league, played a pretty decent schedule, 12th in strength of schedule last year. Okay, well, I can get down with that. I understand why they're in the bottom half of that league when your strength of schedule is 12, right? But you look at UCLA, Nebraska, Iowa, USC, who Jake hates with a passion. Minnesota was not competitive last year on the 45th strength of schedule.
But I think it's worth noting that at least with USC, and this is why I think the SEC Big Ten partnership works so well. At least with USC, like, again, I always bring up the USC Penn State game, right? And how crazy of a game that was, and Penn State winds up winning it. But just the fact that if you look back to last year, USC was involved in massive games throughout the year. Now they may not.
I agree.
They didn't win enough of those games, right? And that's a different conversation.
I'm sorry, I thought you said USC didn't win enough games.
I'm choosing not to go down that route. We don't need to. But the point is more that you had USC on national TV multiple times for the Big Ten, and that's why I'm saying if you're the SEC, the other side of this, it's almost like a twofold conversation. If you're Greg Sankey. You've got all the whining, complaining folks, right, out of the Big 12 and the ACC. These folks that say, I should play 9, Greg Sankey's ruining college football, that crowd of people. Ruined college football.
The devil.
He's the Satan. Like, we get it, dude. There's that sector of people. But then I think for the SEC, there's this other side of it where Greg Sankey has to consider, okay, well, how do we work with the Big Ten in a way where they don't become a better league than ours, but where they can help us push our league forward? Because that's what it is for them right now.
And I will just continue to say what Greg Sankey said yesterday. Strength of schedule has to matter.
Whether people want to agree with it or not, that's up to them. We can go through the analytics and show the rigor of our schedule is different than anyone else's, period. And we had a learning session in September at the CFP about strength of schedule. And strength of schedule isn't everything, but it is an important factor. I remember very clearly one of the messages was if you play the top-ranked team and the 130th ranked team, those two games average out to 65.5. If you play 65 and 66, they average out to 65.5. And so the advisor said, you're just as well playing 65 and 66. Here's my problem. but for maybe two teams in a year, we don't have 65 or 66, and everybody else has a group.
That's my point. So again, I just ask you, why would the SEC, if it stays at 12, or if they don't get more opportunity to add more teams to the college football playoff? Because listen, I'm sitting here telling you on May 28th, it's going to 16.
No doubt about
It's
it.
going to be a 5-11. It's going to 16. The minute that happens, SEC will play 9 games. If it never happens, what are you going to do to force them to play 9 games?
Nothing.
Because who controls it? The SEC and the Big Ten.
And let's say that and again, it's going to go to 16, but let's say that
it is, yeah.
Let's say that it didn't, and it shrunk or something, and there was less opportunity for the SEC. At that point, then your biggest problem is not that they don't play 9. Your biggest problem is you've only had TCU in the college football playoff, or in the national championship game, I should say. Obviously, you've had more in the playoff itself, but in the national championship game, you've only had TCU. That's it. And that was a great game, and I was about that game. That was a great time in the conference. But my point is that all the graphics and the data and the narrative, all of it suggests, yes, the SEC controls this thing because they've won more than you, and they're constantly on TV more than you.
And I just go back to Ohio State. Ohio State is the one team in the Big Ten that you can point to and say, that is what a great story. I think we're all disappointed Oregon fell on their faces the way they did. I don't think is that an indicator of a lack of quality? It's not. But you look at that league, how many dominant programs are in that conference? Well, Ohio State, obviously. I think Oregon, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm not sure. I don't think there's anybody else where you're like, oh yeah, championship quality, great talent, great coaching staff. It's certainly not the scumbags in Ann Arbor.
No.
Right? I do not consider Michigan to be an elite football program. You look at I don't know how many people have been following the Santa Ono situation at Florida. Did you guys see that the Board of Governors, I believe it was, or the Board of Trustees, unanimously voted him to be president of Florida? Now he's got to go to the Board of Governors, who has to approve him, and then he will be the president. What is the number 2 thing outside of he's woke and DEI and outside of all of the bigotry? What's the second thing they bring up? He oversaw one of the most scandalous athletic departments in all of college athletics. Why do we want that at Florida? You look at that, and that's why I think you just throw Michigan out, because I think those scumbag cheating liars in Ann Arbor don't deserve that respect.
Yeah, and I just think that, even if you, and I agree with all that, even if you take that out of it, you look at the roster, you look at where they're at, you're not going to perform or be able to compete at a high level with the situation you're in right now.
Yeah.
So again, for the Big Ten, my main point has always been, in a perfect world for the Big Ten, and this is, I really think Greg Sankey and company think about this. Okay, we're the SEC, we have our group, but then what is the Big Ten's group that's on the horizon that could be dangerous for us? Because if the Big Ten has and then you've got, Penn State, you've got Michigan, you've got Oregon, you've got SC.
Penn State.
Yeah, Penn State. And then you've got Washington lingering. Some years they show up, some years they don't.
I have no doubt that Washington under Jed Fish will come back.
So in a perfect world, you would have 6 that are top 15 quality.
What scares you in the SEC is that they can do what they want.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to ask for your permission. And listen, I'm a Notre Dame fan. If you're new to this show and you probably may not know, I'm a Notre Dame fan. Born and raised in Chicago, love my Irish. One of the things that really disturbs me is we gave up our voting right so that we could have a place. Hey, if you're one of the 16 ranked teams in the country, Notre Dame's automatically in.
Notre Dame, our mother.
And now, thank you, sir. And now that the conference championship doesn't get you a bye, what incentive does Notre Dame have to join a conference? We have none. But the bottom line is we sold our soul to Greg Sankey and the SEC to make sure that we had a spot. And I am of the belief that there's nothing, if you're in the ACC or the Big 12, you're along for the ride.
Yeah, well, and I think, what's interesting with Notre Dame is like if you think about their position as an independent, obviously it doesn't behoove them to join a conference, but I think if you're
No.
looking further down the road, what does behoove them is to be an asset to the SEC. And that's exactly what they chose to do because they've put themselves in a position where they've said, okay, cool, we'll get out of your way as long as you just guarantee us that if we play good football, we're in.
You've got our vote as long as.
As. And
Yeah.
that's what I mean when I talk about, hey, well, if you're the Big 12 in the ACC, where is your equitable conversation with Greg Sankey? Because you're
Exactly.
putting this dude in a position where he's standing up at a podium being upset with you and frustrated, not just with the Big 12 and the ACC, but I think generally frustrated that he just always gets criticism and there's never any ideas on how to push it forward. And then when he does put an idea forward, it's like, oh, well, you're ruining college football, or you ruined college football, or like that's the problem we have. So again,
But wait, why do you hate Greg Sankey? Because I haven't even looked at the comment section yet.
you already know what's there.
I'd really like you to explain to me why you hate Greg Sankey, because I don't. I don't hate Greg Sankey. I think Greg Sankey has been incredibly important for the prosperity long-term of college football.
Mhm.
Because I think what Greg Sankey is as an administrator and an operator is what you should want to be in your life. He does not care what you think. He does not care what others think. Greg Sankey is going to do what he thinks is best, A, for the SEC and its membership, and B, for college football and his partners. It is as simple as that. And if you don't agree with him, great, he's got all the control. What are you going to do about it?
Yes.
And my question is, what is it that you hate about Greg Sankey? Because I don't understand it. If you're a guy that owns a plumbing company or you drive a UPS truck or whatever it is you do, you should hope to operate the way that Greg Sankey does.
Yes.
He makes money. He puts money in the pockets of the people that he represents. He wins championships. Like everything that you want a CEO to do, he does. Yet you don't like him because he's not your CEO. You don't like him because, for instance, ACC fans and Big 12 fans in the comments section overnight losing their mind because I said that teams in both the ACC and the Big 12 don't necessarily care about winning every single snap in a football game. And I'm the guy who says your goal should be to win every single snap in a football game.
Yes.
And if you are a major college football coach, and again, I'll point to Marcus Freeman, I'll point to any coach that you want, they should have to earn their money every single week. Every single week. And yet we're happy to have in the Big 12, Dave Aranda and Mike Gundy still employed. We're celebrating that. In the ACC, you're celebrating the fact that 3/4 of this league doesn't give a rat's ass about winning football games.
And you're celebrating that SMU was your representation along with Miami.
And you have somebody in the ACC is a really good example here because you look at Florida State. Florida State, you hated Florida State because they're tearing this league apart. And then you wanted to get on board with them because, oh, Jordan Travis, that was I can't believe the injustice. And then they have a year like they had last year. Oh, they suck. I don't care what you say about Florida State. You know what I'm convinced of? They want to win every snap. You know why? They had one bad year, and it was bad. They fired everybody except the head coach. Brought in all new coaching talent, brought in all new talent on
100%.
the field. They're not playing around. You want to, everybody says that I knee pad Utah all the time. Oh, what did Utah do? Had a massively damaging and disappointing year in football.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
What did they do? Did they fire Kyle Whittingham? No, but what did Kyle Whittingham do? You think they had to whisper in his ear, hey, we gotta make a change? No, Kyle Whittingham fired his offensive coordinator. And not only that, ran out a bunch of talent on his offense, hired Jason Beck, a BYU guy, to be his offensive coordinator because Jason Beck was one of the most prolific offensive coordinators in the country, who brought his quarterback in, and they've completely changed the way they do business on offense. And they already have the best, if arguably the best offensive line in the Big 12. Oh, by the way, what did they also do with basketball? Men's basketball.
And I think this is the better example.
Incredibly disappointing again. They fired the basketball coach. Did they do that after the season? No. You know when they did it? When the season died. The moment they were ineligible for postseason play, they fired their basketball coach. So you can hate Utah all you want. Mark Harlan wants to win every single snap. I guarantee it. And I wish that everybody in the Big 12, I wish that everybody in the ACC wanted that as well. They don't.
Couldn't agree more.
They don't. And why are we not talking about Tony Petitti, but we're talking about Greg Sankey? Because I got breaking news for you. Not everybody in the Big Ten is trying to win every snap. They're too busy having car washes in the locker room at Northwestern to win every snap.
But, I have to point out to that point, not everybody in the Big Ten needs to win.
That's true.
You know why? Because the Big Ten's got its group of 5, group of 6 teams, that are carrying the conference. So, Nebraska, Northwestern, any of these, Syracuse, any of these rando bottom level Big Ten schools. And Syracuse, maybe not a great example, had a nice year last year. Okay, I get it. But generally speaking, Syracuse and that group at the bottom, dude, they're inconsequential because they're bringing you value by losing, and you don't need them to win national championships. So I completely agree that everyone needs to win. But the difference is that the Big 12 actually needs everybody to want to win, and the Big 10 does not.
They're desperate in the Big 12 for everybody to win.
Yeah.
Okay, 26 minutes from right now, I promise you, we will get to the Mountain West Pac-12 mediation update. Let's get your comments on this story. Ross Dellinger just broke. I think this is the 4th show in a row a news story has broken.
Phone calls or news stories.
Right when we're trying to get to air. Many ADs in the Big Ten say they will not support a 5-11 model if the SEC remains at 8 games. And we told you yesterday on the show, our sources are telling us, hey, if they get 16 and it's ranked 1 through 16 without deference for a conference championship, the SEC will go to 9 games. But there is zero motivation for anybody in the SEC to play 9 games if they don't get to 16 and it's not ranked 1 through 16.